The August 9th, 2022 meeting of the Long Hill Township Planning Board is called to order at 7:36 p.m.
Okay, call to order and statement of compliance. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting a copy of the public meeting dates on the municipal bulletin board and website, by sending a copy to the Echo Sentinel newspaper, and by filing a copy with the municipal clerk. Meeting cutoff. Announcement is made that as a matter of procedure, it is the intention of the planning board not to continue any matter past 10:30 p.m. at any regular or special meeting of the board unless a motion is passed by the members then present to extend the meeting to a later specified cutoff time. Pledge of allegiance. Oh, that's me. I'm a little Zoom rusty.
I don't have mine handy either.
I think I can. Let's see. Can everybody see the flag?
Ah, good. Thank you.
That's fine.
I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Now unsharing. Hold on a minute. Okay. Roll call. Committeeman Ray.
Present.
Committeeman Verleza is currently absent. Ms. Dill is excused this evening. Mr. Hands.
Yeah. Here, yeah.
Mr. Jones.
Present.
Mr. Malinowski.
Here.
Mr. File is currently absent. Vice Chairman Richardson.
Here.
Chairman Sandow.
Present.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to continue our dialogue between the board's master plan committee and the other board members so that the other members can keep up to date on what the master plan committee is generating so that there are no surprises at the end of this long trail. Because this is a working session, there will be no comments from the public. I see 6 members of the public are watching on Zoom, and we don't know how many are watching on television. This meeting is held on Zoom because so many members of the board are traveling. And since I wanted to keep the momentum going on the master plan reviews, and since the members of the public will not be commenting tonight, I agreed to hold this meeting on Zoom. This is not a precedent for future meetings. And speaking of future meetings, to the best of my knowledge, our next meeting will be in September, and that will be a continuation of the hearing on Gates Avenue. And then beyond that, we have new business coming at us from the Township Committee. It looks like this. Maybe you can't, my camera's not going to let you see it, but it's the redevelopment plan for the car wash site. You may recall back in November, we declared that the car wash site was an area in need of redevelopment, and there is now a redevelopment plan has been prepared by the township planner, Jessica. That will be adopted by the township committee at its meeting tomorrow night, and they will refer it to us for comments and approval. And I'm not sure exactly what our role there is. We'll have to find that out tomorrow when I see exactly what they want from us. At any rate, that'll have to go on in September so that project can keep moving. So unless one of those 2 items gets canceled, we may have a breather from master plan work during September. I'm just not sure at this point. And that is the future as I see it. The next meeting, of course, since it is anticipated to be a hearing, will be in the courtroom.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Jones has his hand raised.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I looked away from the screen. What do you have, Tom?
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Mr. Chair. It's regarding the car wash. Are we seeing a second report? Because if you recall, there was a report provided with regards to the car wash, the building, the building to the right, and so forth. So is there a separate document that we're going to see, or is there?
Yes, that what you saw back in November-ish was the study that to declare the car wash an area in need of redevelopment. And
Okay.
we did accept that study, and we did declare it an area in need of redevelopment, and the township committee adopted it as an area in need of redevelopment. And the next step in that process is the creation of a redevelopment plan. This gets into the specifics of what happens next. And Jessica has just produced that, and it will be on the agenda of the township committee tomorrow night. And then it will come to us after that. The decision has been made that that is an area in need of redevelopment. We now just have to take a look at what is proposed there.
Thank
And
you.
I got an advance copy of it today, and there's no surprises.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to understand what the process was and for all those in attendance. Thank you.
Any other questions before we go to master plan? Don, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to thank everyone. I'm one of those traveling, so I appreciate the accommodation to connect with you all via Zoom. As it stands right now, of course, I'm right in the midst of an amazing sunset over the North Carolina mountains, but it's coming right through a window that I cannot block. So I'm going to look very two-faced right now. It'll be the one and only time that I'll say I'm two-faced. So what I'd like to accomplish.
If you turn your head, we get an eclipse of the head.
What I'd like to accomplish tonight is we have several elements that we released in draft with recommendations, is to, as we have before, constructively go through each of what we've put together in regards to the draft elements. I'm going to ask Liz to help in the facilitation of that discussion as we arrive at different elements. Hopefully, you have all had a chance to review this in advance so that you have some comments in the ready. I believe what has worked well in the past is we literally go kind of page by page through these elements. And if somebody has raised a comment and you feel that comment is adequately addressed, there is really no need to repeat the information other than to just say that it has been raised and recorded, and we'll take your feedback and use that as we continue to hone the recommendations to completion. Just as a reminder, we're firmly coming down the home stretch of phase 2 of 3 in the master plan development process. This step or phase, as you know, was to put together recommendations in each of the elements that then will be used to guide ultimately the preparation of the final document, having completed the goals, then working through recommendations, and then finally putting the meat on the bone, as they say, with the final report in the fall into hopefully the late winter by the end of the year. So I just wanted to remind everybody where we are in that process. So with that said, Liz, I don't know if you have the ability to pull up the historic preservation element. I'd like to start there. That's the one that you've all had the longest. And let's go through these recommendations. And what we'll do is just start kind of page by page, and please raise your hand or make a motion, we'll recognize you and provide your comment. So I guess, are there any comments with regards to goal 1? Okay, Mr. Sando?
At recommendation 1.1.1,
Mhm.
it should be clear that there are 2 separate lists involved. And although I'm bringing this up at 1.1.1, it probably also applies further on down.
Yeah.
There is the list of buildings which require protection of some sort, which is required by the ordinance that created the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee. That is a list of about 80 or 90 buildings which have some historic significance, and where the planning and zoning coordinator and the construction official are directed to pass the application to HPAC for its consideration and potential report, which can potentially be considered by those 2 town officials on their way to granting permits. But that list only applies to buildings of significance.
Mhm.
Historic sites is a much longer list, and that is sites which have some historic value, even though they are not subject to building and zoning constraints. For
Mhm.
example, the clay pits, the old blacksmith shop at the blinker light, places which at one time had historic significance, but are not significant now. Now, those might be marker sites, for example, later on. But we have to be careful to use the word site in the context of the broader list, which is outside the scope of the authority of HPAC. And at 1.1.1,
I think we
annual
do
list of
call
the
it a historic sites survey.
Yeah, and at 1.1.1, the list we're talking about is the list that is prepared annually for consumption by the administrative officials of the town, and that only affects the buildings with historic significance. And I'm not exactly sure. You might reach out to HPAC and find out how you want to distinctly label those 2 different lists, because only the shorter list is of relevance to the master plan.
That's fine. I can do that, Dennis.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any comments in regards to that particular recommendation?
Also, there's a parenthetical there that says the Historic Society has done this. That, of course, is not correct. The Historic Preservation Advisory Committee has done that, and the most recent list was presented to the town in April of this year.
Right.
And
Well,
Dennis,
I think we need to have that discussion with the society as well, because they obviously publish something on their website. So
Yes, I am aware that the Historic Society publishes, and their list is about 300, and that's the
correct.
much
This is a-
broader list that I was talking about. But very little, other than the 90 or so historic buildings, not much of that list is master plannable.
Yeah,
It
hey,
is
Den-
what it was.
I think the important thing for me is that this is a published document somewhere, because I'm not sure who has access to it.
that was my question, actually, Dennis, is where is this list of buildings? You sent me something, but is it online anywhere? It's not in the code of the buildings that are under review by HPAC.
The list that the HPAC submitted to the town in April is available. You can open it, you can get it from Deborah. She's got a copy.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Although I must
don't think
tell
that
you
should be
that
the case.
typographically, that list is terrible because it's triple spaced and it's got about 5 entries per page, which means it just rambles on and on and on. If it were a simple single space list of street addresses, it would be a little bit easier to fit into the master plan document.
Mhm.
And
the
so it may
historical-
require some reformatting.
Okay.
Yeah, Historical Society is a little bit easier to read.
Ah, okay.
You do have that list, Deborah. The April list.
And,
Be
and
careful,
Den-
your head will roll off.
and Dennis, I believe you sent it to me as well. So I
Okay.
got that, I'll just make sure that it's referred to correctly in the plan to distinguish it from the 300 properties.
Yeah, the actual
Yes.
language can probably be taken out of the ordinance that created the HPAC 3-30 something.
Okay.
Do you want me to reformat it?
would be
Well,
something that could be
somebody
helpful.
might want to do that. I don't
I
care
don't
who.
think we need to pay Liz for her time to do that.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, whatever works. I know you don't have a lot of free time, Deb, but you know, when
I cannot judge whether or not the town historian himself is in a position to reformat it, but anybody who wants to. And probably sort it into some logical order.
It won't take me much time at all.
Great. The overall goal of this, of course, is creating this transparency for applicants. And this goes back to a goal we have in the land use element. So I think it sounds to me like everybody's comfortable with making sure that this list is transparent and out on a website.
Right.
Any other comments to, we'll call it objective 1.1, the recommendations 1.1.1 through 1.1.4?
Don, I just want to come back to that list. We're not maintaining that list, right? We're always
That's
going to
correct.
point to their list. We don't maintain it. We don't have a
Yeah,
copy.
and we played around with should and shall. We arrived at shall, that the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee really should have ownership.
Yep.
And commit to updating this or reviewing this at least once a year.
Well,
Yeah.
here's the problem. Here's the problem, and that is that the HPAC has to create this list and forward it to the town officials once a year. But if we put a copy into the master plan, it will sit frozen as a 2022 view for the next 10 or 20 or 30 years.
That's why I don't want that list in the master plan. We should reference to where it is, and then they can obtain it from there, because that'll be a golden source that's maintained year on year.
I agree with Mr. Jones entirely.
that
As long
makes,
as-
yeah, go ahead, David.
No, go ahead, Liz, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that does make a ton of sense. The only thing I want to check with Steve Warner about is whether you have to have it in the master plan. Because there's potential that legally you would have to have it. I just want to double check that, but I understand your point.
So Liz, we wouldn't be able to just reference that is available on the town website?
We
in the
might be,
master plan?
we might be. I just want to double check. That would be the only reason I would say put it in the plan, is if it has to be in the plan. I just want to double check that with Steve Warner.
But there's nothing, but there's nothing wrong in saying as of this date, surely. I mean, nothing sticks in, nothing is like, there has to be language that can support its inclusion if it needs to be so.
Also, there is a
Shouldn't be that
sticky,
difficult.
there's a sticky problem that always comes up as to whether or not the property owner wishes to be listed. I mean, most of the property owners of historic properties, all but 5 of them, for example, in this town, have opted not to apply for historic state or national historic listing. Why? Because there are certain restrictions that go along with getting those listings.
Mhm.
We could make an argument that similarly being listed in the town master plan has some significance that the property owner ought to be able to vote on.
Okay. All right, any other comments to our recommendations 1.1.1 through 1.1.4?
1.1.2 sounds like a duplicate.
This is the difference between a list and a map.
Right.
Is a map really necessary? Considering the time constraints and the graphic capabilities available to the master plan committee, do we really need a map that shows 90 old houses when we have their street address list listed?
Well, it's not actually for the master plan or committee to do, or the planning board. It's saying HPAC should do it.
You might want to check that out before you put that in as a recommendation, because I'm not sure that anybody on HPAC has the capability to generate that map either. Those maps have in the past, in the distant past, been generated by a historic person in town, but I don't know that he is currently active in HPAC or the town historical orbit, and clearly not anymore in the master plan or in the planning board. So
Well,
there may be nobody to produce that map, and
it is
an expense that we may not need.
it's a recommendation. It doesn't have to be,
Right.
it doesn't have to be done.
Yeah.
Chairman, how much does the list change year to year on average?
Well, I can tell you this. In the past 30 years, approximately since the last master plan, 28 years, 10 historic houses have been demolished and 1 preserved. And if you press me, I can list the 10 historic houses that were demolished.
That's okay.
Either demolished or in such a state of disrepair today that they could fall down tomorrow. There's about 2 of those. So the answer is listing them in the master plan, as we did in the 1996 master plan, doesn't guarantee anything. If the property has a higher and better use, the owner will put it to a higher and better use.
Mhm.
And we'll see more of that when we get on down to the later recommendations on deferral of demolition.
Yeah.
But we have lost 10 houses
Well,
out of
what-
the list. On the other hand, more and more houses get to be historic as the calendar marches on.
That's why they do it every year.
Mhm.
All right.
At
Good.
at
Are we-
number 1.1.4, work with the county to update their inventory and mapping. My notation there is ancient. I'm not sure that the county has done anything in the past 30 or 40 years to update their mapping.
They
So I don't know
have,
if there's anybody to work with.
no, they have it there, and they have pretty extensive GIS layers.
Yeah.
And so you just want to make sure that they have access to all the information. So somebody doesn't, lives outside of Long Hill or, isn't as familiar with Long Hill as you are, would look at that GIS data and make some conclusions that, that's 25 years out of date.
I suppose you are all aware that the most expensive national historically listed entity in Long Hill is currently in the process of demolition. You're all aware of that?
I'm not aware of it.
Yeah.
The PSE&G power line was built in
Oh.
1928.
Right.
PSE&G put it on the
Let's move on.
historic, national historic list, and
be
it's
all
now
right.
being torn down.
Right, yeah. Okay, so can we move on to objective 1.2?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you
Okay.
see, I can't tell what you can see on the screen. Can you
Yeah,
see?
we can. No,
Okay.
that's a good.
Okay,
Any comments on the first recommendation, a series of recommendation 1.2.1, and there's some sub recommendations.
1.2.1 is beyond the scope of the duties of the HPAC as defined in the creating ordinance. So that the advisory committee's job is to advise the township committee, yada, yada, as they have done for the restoration of Old Town Hall. But this is an additional duty that has not currently assigned to the members of the committee, HPAC committee.
Let me just double check that. It's really more that they could be a resource. I don't see that it would have to be explicitly listed in their charter. I'm trying to, can you tell me again what the, where that is listed? It's in chapter 3.
In chapter 3:30 something, 32, 33, 34, something like that.
Okay, I'll double check, but I don't see a problem with that, even, you know, including this recommendation, even if it's not explicitly listed.
Committeeman Ray, you have anything at this point?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Not at this point, Dennis.
I keep trying to scroll your screen, Liz. I'm sorry.
Do you want me to
Yeah,
Should
I think we could
scroll
we
down?
could scroll down.
Okay,
So
sure.
the sub-recs are really related to the overall rec with some specificity.
And I have a note at 1.2.3 that's redundant.
Can I just make a quick interruption at this point, if you don't mind, just on 1.2.1.1, for example.
Mhm.
Some of these were supported by input from HPAC.
Mhm.
So I just want to make that mention that this is not just planning board alone putting some of these recommendations together.
Yeah, thank you, David.
Okay, well-
That's a really good point.
In 2018, a historic preservation element was brought to the planning board, and the planning board decided to send it back to the master plan committee with instructions to negotiate with HPAC. So what you have said is probably correct.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not going to necessarily go and point out each one, but just so you know, there has been reference to HPAC.
Dennis, I did find 2-35.2F. HPAC's duties include carrying out other advisory, educational, and informational functions, as will promote historic preservation in the township.
Okay. And you're squeezing those 3 words to include.
Well, really just to identify them as a resource
A resource.
for
Yeah.
residents. I mean, the bottom line is that's the overall intent.
And I think that they're empowered to do that in the code.
Okay.
1.2.1.2.
1.2.1.2, okay.
You got that on the screen. Historic plaques, that program exists. So the word create,
Should we continue?
well, how many things are going on in this town that we want to continue going on? The question is, how much do we clutter up the master plan with the word continue? There's nothing new or innovative in that paragraph. It's happening. It's been happening.
So are all those structures that are on that list, those 90 structures, do they have plaques or some sort of recognition?
Oh, about 10 or 12 of them do.
Okay, so I think it's not terrible to leave that in.
How about support instead of create?
Okay,
Just
I guess the town actually pays to have those plaques made. Is that right, Brendan?
That's right. It comes from the Historic Preservation Society itself.
How about we even use a little less words instead of create a campaign to enhance, just say support public recognition of historic properties.
there you go. That's good.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
okay.
1.2.1.3 is a little bit tricky because of the Morris County recently lost a court case over giving historic preservation money to a church. And although the court said you don't have to get that money back, just don't ever do it again.
Was that because it's a church or religious entity?
Because it was a
No,
church.
There was a whole separate group that was challenging. It's a constitutional group that's challenging across the country the allocation of funds that don't embrace separation of church and state. So I think that's a pretty unique
Right.
related issue to religious institutions connecting with historic preservation funds.
Yeah, I'm just not sure what the extent of proactivity would be. I mean, my house is almost historic. Does that mean somebody's gonna come out and help me get a grant to put a new roof on it?
If you wanted,
Yeah.
I think they'd laugh at me.
Is this a good thing?
You never know.
You got 2 Cadillacs in the garage and you want
Okay.
county
Did-
money to put a new roof on your house?
As long as you got some wild turkeys in the back, you're set.
And a seal. Liz, is this a good thing? Is this a logical, realistic thing?
now I can't even remember which one is the proactively assisting homeowners.
Yes.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think I think it's fine for something it's not that HPAC has to spend a lot of money doing it, but if they have a website or something, they can put links on their website to resources for funding or places that people could turn to if they wanted to, get advice or help or funding sources or whatever.
I'll buy that. Write that down.
Okay.
Indeed, I mean, it really doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
And really it's
No.
the expertise of the members. I mean, they very kindly came and looked at the Millington Firehouse because we were thinking about getting
Mhm.
grants to kind of redo one of the rooms. And it's, it was part of the original firehouse and certainly, the members of HPAC came and looked at it and gave us some direction or on the project. So, I mean, maybe the word proactively we could strike and just put assist, but
Yeah.
I think
I
it's
think
a pretty good thing.
I agree.
Okay.
1.2.2 is again just a restatement of the obvious that's in effect. You even cited the ordinance that put it into effect and it's happening. I'm not sure it's a master plan issue.
Shall be submitted to the. Yeah, I would actually agree with you. I think you're right. It probably can be taken out. Because it is in the code already.
And I'm sorry I didn't read ahead and give you the exact ordinance citation because you've already printed it here. Uh, 1.2.3 strikes me as being redundant. The land use element speaks for itself.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Dennis. That looks a bit of a stretch for me. I think you probably could strike it.
I think we could, because I think that the sentiment behind it is actually already addressed in the land use plan.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
Yep.
We're good with that.
All right.
1.2.4. I suppose you could put the current expansion of Main Avenue, the last 2 blocks down to Valley. I suppose you could categorize that under recommendation 1.2.4
Mhm.
because we're doing the trees and I think we're doing the street lamps in that project.
I think that is what it was in reference to, that, some of these initiatives have begun and sort of expanding them.
I'm sorry Victor isn't here because he could speak to that point. One point 2.5, let me take the second of your questions first. Why 1938? Because that's the date of the first zoning ordinance in Long Hill. So everything before 1938 is grandfathered because there was no ordinance. That's the significance of 1938.
Okay.
But your comment, your first comment about generously granting variances, I have to admit that was my language many years ago, and everybody seems to think it's not lawful.
All right, I'm going to take that recommendation out.
Yeah,
The recommendation
that one-
as a whole?
yeah, that
I was-
one left in. Go ahead, Liz.
I was going to, just because, I mean, we could keep in municipal development regulations should reflect a policy that encourages continued historic integrity. That's fine, but I don't want to have the language about generous grant.
Oh, yeah, I agree on that piece. I wasn't, but the rest, the intent, is it still fair or?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we could keep in sort of, it's like just a policy that municipal development regulations should reflect a policy that encourages continued historic integrity. I think that's fine.
Okay.
I just didn't like the first sentence.
No, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, we, at our last discussion about the master plan last month, we did talk about the architectural guidelines manual, which is outside the ordinance itself, but which is available on the counter. And I'm wondering if this thought doesn't belong somewhere in the architectural guidance, that if you try to get away with something that was legal 90 years ago, we'll probably approve it.
I didn't realize there was an architectural guidelines manual. I think we should make reference to that in here as being one of the documents that should be available online.
Well, that's a whole nother discussion.
This is a whole bigger discussion.
So don't.
That's a
forget it.
whole nother discussion.
All
I
right,
thought
forget-
we got rid of that.
There's history on the history of that one.
Okay, forget
Yeah.
it. Erase.
No,
Erase.
good. I like, personally, I like the idea.
That manual's become the third rail of the planning board.
Okay, all right. Never mind.
Why did, I thought we got rid of that.
So is it
Yeah,
really
finesse
available? Is it really
this, Liz.
available on the counter in the engineering or code office?
Well, we never got to that point. It's in the can. We were ready to adopt it and we got talked out of it by our attorney. And we still have to take action on it.
All right,
Yeah.
well,
And maybe that's something that the master plan committee should recommend, is that we take action on the pending architectural manual, not in this element, and I'm not sure what element it does go in.
Maybe it doesn't go in any element.
Maybe it goes in the introduction.
But why is it on a counter? Because it looks as though it's an official document from the township, and I don't think it is.
Well, that document was written back in 2016 by a couple of well-intentioned members of the planning board who really didn't want to see mistakes repeated.
Right.
Okay,
And-
but it wasn't
Yeah.
adopted. I certainly don't think it's a good idea. We've debated it. We've gone back and forth on it, and I had no idea that it was sitting on a counter somewhere
Yeah.
to be given to applicants.
It isn't. It's just sitting in a few people's computers.
Oh, okay. It's not a
It-
counter.
it's
Okay.
That's a
not-
little
it's-
different.
The only thing that's out there in public is the section of the ordinance called architectural standards, which is obsolete and unlawful.
Right.
And we
agreed
tried to,
address that.
improve that back in 2016 and got stomped on by our attorney.
I think we addressed that in the land use element. So I think, yeah, that's okay. I just, I thought that there was a document literally for people to review and.
Not yet.
It may very well be, Liz.
Yeah, all right,
Yeah,
forget it,
one
forget
day.
All
it.
right, so
Yeah.
I think we need to park it, but for now, we're not going to reference an architectural standards manual in the master plan document
Okay,
at present.
that's fine, that's fine.
Okay.
1.2.6.
Okay, so this would, I think
I've
this,
got a problem here in the last sentence of 2.
okay, so these are two alternatives.
Yeah, let's just make sure everybody understands the
Yeah.
overall intent. The overall intent here is to put a pause on essentially historic sites, correct, Liz? Would these be
That's right.
historically designated sites in the demolition? Now, this goes directly to, if you recall, the Goddard School application that occurred on Plainfield Road, where there were some historic things that people wanted to record. This is not for preservation as much as recording and documenting structures that are going to be demolished.
It just gives the, interested parties an opportunity to document the historic structure before it gets
If they
demolished.
choose, right,
If they
and they've
choose.
got a 90-day period. And the question is that going to be considered too onerous? I don't think so, but I think 90 days seems reasonable. If people are going to want to document before demolition.
Hang on a second, go back
gotta
up, go
take-
back up,
I'm
go
sorry.
back up a second.
Okay,
Can you just hold there a second? I
yeah,
thought we changed some of the words here under the third line, if we're still on number 1. Demolition delay provisions in historic preservation.
oh,
are
it
used
should
to
be the
prevent-
it should be shall consider. I realize it.
Yeah,
Used to, not to prevent demolition, it's to document. Used,
right.
demolition provisions are used to, no, I don't think that's,
Yeah,
We've got to be careful here with that word prevent.
This was an earlier version, because I do recall we did change
I'm sure we changed it,
the
and we got rid
language
of
around prevention.
right, and then we got rid of number 2 completely, I thought.
Oh, okay, all right. So maybe I didn't realize that you made that amendment. So that's fine. I can change that.
Right.
So just for my understanding, right? So I own a building and I decide that I want to demolish it for whatever reasons, and I'm perfectly within my rights to do that. So I apply for a demolition permit, right? So
Mhm.
are you saying here that somehow or other there should be a potential stay of 90 days in order for that building to be documented, or indeed, as I don't know if they're still using it here, but it's HPAC or concerned citizens / other parties to explore alternatives. So are you saying that there has to be a stay for 90 days, or potentially a stay for 90 days? Is that what's being proposed here?
Well, yes, that's what's in this language, but I think from what I'm understanding, the revisions from the master plan committee, they're not, and correct me if I'm wrong, master plan committee,
Yeah.
that they're not suggesting that, because sometimes the demolition permit is put in place so people can be like, oh, you know what, we gathered funds, we want to move this house to another location. And like, you can do whatever you want with your property, but we're going to move that house because we want to keep it. But it sort of sounds, if I'm understanding correctly, that that's not really the intention of the master plan committee. The master plan committee is not saying you can come up with alternatives. The master plan committee is saying just give everybody time to, go out and take photos and stuff like that. If that is the case, then I think 90 days is too long.
Yeah,
Because
it's-
I mean, I think if it was like, hey, we need time to figure out, like, get money and whatever, to move a building, then 90 days is okay. But I think if it's just merely documenting, I think it should be less time.
And
So what's
I think you have to
what would be an
balance the rights
appropriate
of the
time?
owner, right? Here, and I'm all for documenting historic structures if that's what we need to do. But if that, I think there's a lot of merit to that. If if they're going to disappear from the face of the earth. But a 90-day period to do it is, I think, it's too onerous on the owner, and an infringement on their
So let's
rights.
come up with this. I mean, I guess the first question is, are folks on board with the intent? And then the second component is coming up with, then I agree, maybe a more reasonable time frame of which to document that. And again, Liz, my understanding is this would just be for properties that are on the list, the
Right.
historic sites list. This isn't every property. This isn't, oh, I want to document something that's on somebody's house or property that isn't on the list.
Yeah, but
Yes.
I'm reading number 2, which says 50 years old. And quite frankly, I live in one of the first McMansions built in town in 1972. My house is just reaching 50 years old. It's a standard colonial McMansion. It has no historic significance at all. And yet, if you have a
sorry to interrupt,
50-year
Dennis.
limit, you're going to catch me.
Number
Yeah,
2, we said to remove. Don't even look at 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, number two,
Don't look
number
at
two, number two, we're deleting.
I-
Forget it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, I'll
forget
take
worry about
number
it.
2. It could
Then-
also, we could limit also the pool of structures that this applies to. Like, for example, I might suggest that you only put it if it's like on the state or historic register, national register of historic place, or something like that.
Well, there's
So-
only
But
one
Liz, wouldn't
house in
that be-
town on the
Yeah,
historic
that's not
register.
so many.
Oh,
But-
okay, okay.
Liz,
All the
wouldn't that
rest
be-
are public buildings.
But wouldn't that already? Yeah, okay. So there aren't any, is that right? There aren't any on any of those in town, because wouldn't other rules apply if they were on one of those lists, the state or?
No, they don't. The state and the national registers is more of like a, what we call it, like an honorific. There's really no teeth to it. It's just kind of a nice.
Okay.
Now,
thing
the
to do it.
90 odd houses that are on the current list might be a starting point. They are basically old farm and vacation houses on Valley Road and Long Hill Road and Mountain Avenue, Carlton Road, the old streets in town. And 90 might be a place to start, but I'm not sure that you could put a definitive year as the starting or ending point for this.
I think it should probably be houses that have to go before HPAC review. It would be those houses, not the 50, or not everything that was built 1972 or later.
Yeah, well, the problem is that the houses for HPAC review are houses that require a construction permit. Demolition permit is something different.
So
But,
where does the demolition permit come from?
Well, they would have to apply for a demolition permit if they wanted to take down those homes, so.
Right, but the 90-day review or the HPAC review period is only if you want to construct a modification to your house. It doesn't currently address demolition. So this demolition is a new business.
Right. And that's the point, is to sort of, and not that they would control demolition, but that they would in some way just be given opportunity to document the structure.
To the best
so
of my knowledge, this preservation and deferral of demolition has only worked once in the past 25 years in this town. And that's the Torrey Mansion. And the developer agreed to try to sell the mansion as part of subdivision. But he agreed that if he couldn't sell it within a year, he could tear it down and build something else on that lot. He happened to find a buyer in 51 weeks.
But I think the consequence of the Goddard School is a driver behind this as well. We
Yeah.
all know the story there.
Yeah.
But if everybody's okay with the intent, then I guess it's just a fine tuning of,
Yeah, I mean,
the language.
Would 60 days, 30 days seems too quick. 60 days might be more reasonable, or 45 days.
But
45.
I'm thinking about the owner's rights, right? I mean, I think I personally, I think the only thing we could manage to get away with here is just to say that as soon as a demolition permit is applied for, HPAC will be informed so that HPAC can then talk to the owner in order to discuss documentation or whatever else it might be. But otherwise, I think you're impacting unnecessarily the rights of the owner of the property.
I need to interrupt for just a minute, Deborah. I have an email from a satisfied taxpayer that says we are not on TV.
I'm aware.
Brendan,
again? Deborah, say
Unfortunately,
again.
there was an issue with the Zoom and the feed. I was texting with the web person, and
Can it be fixed?
I don't believe it can for tonight.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Brendan.
Oh no, that was really all. I'd finished what I was going to say, Dennis.
But if Brendan, if HPAC and the owner both agreed within a day, oh, you know what, everything's good, we don't need to document. There has to be some levels of a small process here. The thing is, I don't want to end up with a Goddard school situation again, but at the same time, absolutely agree. If HPAC and the owner say, you know what, there's not much here to look at. Do we really need to do it? Then as long as they're both happy with it. It's just
Well, let me give you an example. The town just bought a house and lot, and the house probably would qualify for a demolition delay. Would the town be subject to this, the township itself, as the owner of the house?
There are, I don't know, because the short answer is I don't know, because I know there are people who say, oh, they're not subject to their own laws. So I'm not sure.
Okay. So do we just take
You
this
would
right
hope
away?
that the town would be, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Make
if we,
itself.
right.
Deborah?
Again, this was born by a single, at least to my knowledge, a simple application in which there were some historic preservation or historic details of the structure that everybody was scrambling to record. That's all. If we think that this is going to be too onerous for an applicant or for a property owner, then we should just strike the whole thing.
Well, I think we should revisit and revise and rethink.
No, but
Deborah, do you have
I mean-
something? Deborah keeps raising her hand.
Sorry.
Well, as I'm listening to this conversation, and I'm sorry if I have a bad echo, I'm gonna be devil's advocate and ask the committee and the board, if somebody submits for a demo permit on a residential house that is listed on the HVAC list, what is supposed to happen on the procedural side? Because I guarantee you that nobody in the building department is going to look at this property unless it's actually on the historic registry for the state, and there's only one of those properties.
But,
So I'm just thinking on a procedural side.
But Deborah, I think right now there's a list within the construction department, certainly for alterations, and so I imagine, although there's not a procedure now, it would be a procedure that would be similar to that would be instituted, so that demo permit, you check the list. If there's a list, if it's on the list, you inform the Historic Preservation Society, so that you can Historic Preservation can come in and talk to the owner and talk about documenting it or doing whatever they need to do. And then really it's a negotiation between the owner and HPAC. That's the way I look at it. And if it was, and I think that's probably going to get us into the least trouble. And it's not onerous at all on the owner. And in fact, I think if I remember correctly, with the Goddard School and the house that was there, all HPAC wanted to do was to be able to gain entry and take photographs, and they were allowed to do that once they found out that actually was resolved. There was a little bit more of a tussle going back and forth with the state, I believe, or the county historic preservation, and I remember they tried to get a stay on it, or that's my recollection. That wasn't that wasn't such a good thing, and it wasn't, and you know, we didn't do it. But certainly, as far as HVAC was concerned, I believe that they managed to do everything that they wanted to do there by simply talking to the owner.
The other issue to consider is the reality that you can apply for a demolition permit at any time and start that clock running. Long before you've issued a contract to tear the house down or replace it, you can start the clock running. There is one building in Myersville that's had a demolition permit outstanding for over 10 years. It could not, you know, it's clearly whatever time limit you put on this for review, that time limit has expired, and that building could be knocked down tomorrow with an existing permit. So
Well, the only other
approved-
caveat I'll say is that once a permit application is submitted to the construction department, they have statutorily 20 business days.
Okay.
All right, so I think that there are maybe more nuances that would have, I mean, for example, if a tree fell on a house, there'd have to be exceptions. You wouldn't say, oh, well, we need to make sure this has to go to HVAC first or something. You know, I mean, there would have to be some sort of more nuances. I think if everybody can be in agreement about the idea, the concept of at least alerting HVAC if something has a demo permit that's on the list of properties, then I think that's probably okay for right now.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we'll take this, we'll work this a little bit more. Okay,
Yeah.
we flagged it. We appreciate your comments, and let's take another look at this one, Liz.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, I think that rounds out. Wait, we have a couple
There's-
more.
there are
at the
two
end
more.
here.
yeah, 1.2.7 and 0.8. I don't see any municipal purpose in encouraging the additional listing of the Longview Summer Colony. Most of the houses from the Longview Summer Colony have long been torn down and replaced with bigger houses. It's one of those places that doesn't have a house worth preserving anymore. And sometimes the township committee gets carried away on the fact that we don't want any more signage.
Well, I think this 1.2.7 ties into some recommendations that are in the land use element. I to be honest, I'm unfamiliar with the summer colony, and and I kind of have to go on your expertise, or you know, the board's expertise as to whether it should be included here. But I think that you know, having sort of branding or some signage for certain areas that have a historic past that is fine. And I think if there are efforts that somebody wants to undertake outside of the planning board, you know, somebody on HPAC or whatever wants to undertake to do a designation or nomination to be on the state or national registers, I don't think there's any problem with that either.
I mean, but I've lived here for 20-some years now, and I didn't know, I'm unfamiliar with any of these places, the Summer Colony and the state, the Myersville Village, Longview, the historic district. I only became aware of that about a year ago. So how historic are they? They're not, you know, kind of ingrained into the fabric of the township.
Well, that's the whole point of the recommendation. We don't.
Well, the thing is, if they're historic, great, then more people should know about that. I've been here for all this time and I had no idea, right?
Yeah, I guess the issue is, do we want to embrace the brand of some of these historic areas or not? And have it forgotten, or people not really aware? I mean, you see this in a lot of towns, Brent. You see signage like this pop up in a lot of towns. Like all of a sudden you'll see Old Basking Ridge, you know, or old, you know, you know, where you kind of designate as an area and give it an historic brand, you know.
And I think that if we put some really nice historic plaques at Myersville Circle, stopping to read them would certainly improve traffic flow.
Right.
I think that it was that 2.7 was more tied into economic development initiatives. Is this sort of like, oh, hey, we're in Sterling, or I you know, I don't know, but that there was some sort of thing. Yeah.
you know, if you want economic development initiatives, let's do something about the flooding, right? Not try and brand it, you know,
Okay.
workers' village, because literally nobody. It was so historic that everybody forgot about it.
Well, the workers, Sterling, we have signs for it. Why is that an issue? I could debate
No,
the Millington and
where is it?
Myersville and Longville. It's down. I thought it was at the park by the train station.
Right across the street from Dorsey's, there's a plaque
Dorsey's.
for the Sterling
flag.
Workers District.
That's
Yeah,
that's,
guys,
that's a
listen,
designated
I
thing.
stand
So,
corrected.
yeah.
Yeah,
Look at the plaque.
this gets into a very personal preference thing. You know, these types of storyboards and signage can be really, you know, people love them or they like, oh, I don't know why we're putting these up, but it's a personal preference. Do you want to embrace history or not? You know,
Well, we already
That's
have with Sterling.
so much is being destroyed in our society.
Correct.
Well, the thing is, right, we have a plaque, right? So what else? I mean, that's all we have left of the Sterling Workers Historic District.
No,
I mean,
that's not true.
Yeah.
You have a streetscape.
what's-
It's a streetscape as much as anything else.
So it's what? It's a
of roads
pattern of streets.
for the streets and some of the buildings, but that's more the streetscape. But the point is, we've already designated it. We've already gone through half a process on Sterling, I believe. Right. So what's the problem of just making sure we continue on and support it, and there may be some consequences. Talk separately on them. But yeah, whether you want to think Myersville Village does or does not fall in that category, or Millington, let's make a case for it and see if it's worthwhile doing.
Because I mean, there's a lot of confusion, right? It's a hamlet, the Myersville Village. Then we've got a hamlet.
Well, it should be Hamlet.
Designation.
It should be Hamlet. It should be Hamlet. Yeah.
Right, okay, but it's in Millington Village. Where the hell's Millington Village? I've lived here, you know, since '94. I don't know where the village is.
This
The
is
cafe.
zoned, right? Because we're going to rezone it to Millington Village. I thought that was a land use. MV.
I think there are 3 historic buildings in the lesser Millington Village, maybe 4. There are also some newer buildings there, and there are some derelict buildings there. All taken all together, it's not a place that I would walk in.
What I would, the way I see this isn't necessarily tied to buildings, it's sort of tied to areas of the town, and maybe you have like a storyboard that has, you know, historic photos of what used to be there, just and just to sort of give it some interest. You don't have to do it, but you know, it could be.
Hey, remember, this
Yeah.
is a master plan. This is a master plan, and I'm not sure that I can't find the right word right now. Beautification, no, is a part of the master plan.
You know, I'm liaison to the historic to HBAC, and so let me take. I mean, you obviously know where I'm coming down right now on this, but let me go back and talk to the experts within the town, and you know, they very often have a way of you know, bringing some other things to bear and changing my mind. So let me do that if we and presumably we'll come back and be looking at this at some point in the future.
That's fine. I think that's fine. Is that fine, Don?
Sorry, I'm just unmuting. I had a dog barking. Yes, that's fine. Let's put this in, quote, the parking lot along with the above recommendation on the demolition related issue and come back. Okay.
Someone once told me that a good idea can be written on the back of a business card. And having spent over an hour talking about historic preservation, I'm wondering if there's anything in here that would fill up the back of a business card.
I think there's a lot of business cards that could be filled up. So,
Yeah.
so good. So we've got
Okay.
multiple business cards.
All right. How are folks feeling? So we're a little over an hour, about an hour into this.
We've also got 2 resolutions at the tail end of this meeting, so you've
Right.
probably got about an hour and a half to go through the other 2 elements.
Okay. So, it would be great if we have the stamina. I know Zoom can get tiresome a little bit, but if we've got the stamina to at least get some of your preliminary
And what do you
comments
want to do for
on
dinner?
circulation element. Why don't we pull that one up?
Want to order
Because
something?
That's a little bit longer than the Parks and Recreation.
Okay, let's see.
Maybe we order something from somewhere? No?
Yeah, right.
Are you delivering, Brendan?
Maybe. Oh, sorry, I thought it was on mute.
What's for dinner, Brendan?
At least, at least I was just ordering dinner, right?
Yeah, I know. Hey,
And,
hey,
and thanks for telling me quickly.
All right.
All right, Liz, do you want to guide us through?
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
Okay, well, I think, let's see. All right, so the first is, address existing vehicular traffic circulation issues, which is essentially, identifying intersections that are problematic, streets that might be problematic. Usually when we do these kinds of master plans, we work through the police department and identifying those areas. And that's kind of what the first sort of goal, objective, and recommendation is. Sometimes in a plan, we actually do identify the intersections. That would be just another step. But I think for right now, maybe we just want to recommend that process be undertaken. I'm sure the police probably already do this, but it's sort of making a policy recommendation that it be,
So Liz, because we did talk to the police when we went through this process, but are you saying to make this more of a regular sort of dialogue?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. The thing is, in the information that I had, it didn't list any specifics. And I don't know, maybe you do have that and I just didn't see it. And if you do, that we can put it in. But this is more, the kinds of things that you would want to look at.
On a regular basis or just at the time of master plan? Typically, how would it typically
I think
be
that you
done?
could sort of say we can, like there be an annual review or something like that, or a 5-year review, because maybe an annual is a little too onerous.
Right.
Maybe
Sure.
every 5 years or something like that.
Could we do something like that as a suggestion then? Just put some sort of little bit of a process around it rather than once in a sort of blue moon?
Yeah. And that
That'd
can be, yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, I highlighted the last bullet in this 1.1.1 that says a line of sight. The sight triangle is a real problem in the month of August. And when I look right past the bushes and shrubs on the corner, I have to pull out into the intersection and I almost get T-boned by a car coming from my left. And happened to me this morning. It would be nice if we could actually create the sight triangles, but on the other hand, on Long Hill Road, the right of way is so skinny that there's an awful lot of bushes and shrubs that there are just there. And to the extent that the right of way isn't very clear, those may belong to the property owner. Who's going to trim them?
Well, I think the goal for this, I would say, or the priority would be those intersections where people have gotten T-boned. And I don't mean to be flippant, but that there probably are some intersections that have been more prone to accidents or more prone to near accidents. And that at least be identified. And if it's something that is within the township, purview, or if it's something that is in the county purview, which probably a lot of these are, then it would be, notifying the county and saying we need to improve the sightlines. If it's a private citizen, I think you can send them a letter or whatever.
Well, an original site plan that's approved will have to show the site triangles, but after 5 or 10 years, nobody's enforcing the site triangles on the original site plan. And that may in fact not be a police issue, but rather a township engineer issue. That's up to the township to
And
decide.
Dennis, isn't that really a focus on site triangles in regards to the entrance and egress from that specific site? It may not necessarily involve the site as it relates to an intersection that it's adjacent to.
Yeah, and also I think actually the township engineer probably is the right, when it comes to something like site triangles. I don't know if the police department is
Right.
equipped to do that, to be honest. I don't know.
One of the worst site triangle issues in town, I think, is the intersection of Long Hill and Mountain. And yet those are both county roads with a big expansive field. And if the county's got to come and cut the grass to clear that site triangle.
Yeah, well, then but this, I think, is trying to establish a process whereby the county is alerted to that and said, this is an issue, you know?
Well, they come when they come.
Well, if they get more pressure, maybe they'll come sooner.
And maybe the solution is to go spray weed killer on their weeds.
I don't want to put that in the master plan, but yeah,
Right.
could be.
I mean, I agree that site triangles is very carelessly enforced in this town. But I can't come up with an action plan on how to fix it.
Well, I think the first step is identification. And if it becomes then something that is, then you can kind of figure out, well, who's responsible for improving this? But the first step is identifying what needs to be improved.
And the real question that we debated at the master plan level, master plan committee level was, are the police best equipped to do this? Town engineer, a combination? Because we don't want to obviously put things in the plan that put or imply a certain overreach with regards to responsibilities. Brendan, are you aware of the police already doing a lot of these things, or?
Yeah, I mean, if I was just about to say, if I had a problem with a site triangle issue, the police would be my first port of call.
Mm-hmm.
And they would certainly be able to, enforce any regulations there, because it's a traffic safety.
And for and township owned areas that could be the cause of it, is DPW maintaining?
Yeah, I mean, DPW does a good job of maintaining. I mean, even, the part that I think recently or in past years, certainly, whenever it's got bad at Mountain and Long Hill, DPW is actually going out there and cut that back. So yeah, that's something that DPW is very proactive about, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
All right. Any other comments on this or feedback on 1.1.1?
Okay, so then the next one, and to be honest, I'm not wedded to this objective. I was trying to come up with something. Because I had the recommendations and I was trying to create an objective behind the recommendations, but the recommendations are things that have been in other master plans that seem to have be carried over. One has an evaluation of of the paper streets that exist and vacating them. One is to connect the two ends of Delaware Avenue. And then there was another one that I know Alan File sent in an email to me, that there were other street connections, other stubs, I guess, that could be connected and that those should be evaluated. He didn't give
I think we're past the need to evaluate. I think we definitely have a problem with the High Street should be cut through, Old Mill Road should be cut through. I don't know why we keep saying evaluate when these are obvious holes that the master plan committee has had identified to it over the past many years. It's no secret that we've got these gaps that should be fixed for circulation. And I don't know
So
why we
let's-
don't
so
list them.
let's, so Dennis, let's just make sure we list them then. Instead of evaluate, just say these areas need to be addressed.
Yeah, and if Dennis, if you either you could give them to me now, or if you want to send them
Just
to me
send us
tomorrow,
an
it's
email.
fine.
Yeah, well, we can take, I mean, the High Street one, I would personally not support, but, and Delaware, I wouldn't even support these days either, so. But we know
And
there's an
the-
application with this, so that's why it's a bit sensitive.
And the Old Mill Road disconnect, Liz, you and I talked about this
Yeah,
some weeks ago. Let's just write it down here.
If we all look, yeah, then we can debate.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we should still, I think we should list them, but I think there should be some caveat language. You know,
No
'cause if-
caveat, we should debate. I don't know if everybody else feels the
This is a
same.
circulation plan. What's
All right,
what's the
all right.
caveat? Maybe we
cav-
don't need to circulate?
No, the caveat being if there are good reasons why, I don't know,
Correct.
High Street
Well,
should.
there has to be a reason for it, because it's going to cost money and it's going to displace things.
Mm,
Like, it's going to be impacts on neighbors, so there has to be a reason. Just because somebody likes it, doesn't mean say it's good.
Okay,
well, again, the overall objective is emergency access and ease of vehicular circulation. So let's keep that
Correct.
in mind as we're going through these things.
I
Okay,
have a note here, 1.2.1, vacate paper streets. How is that related to emergency access? That seems totally out of place in this section.
yeah, I think that was one of the, I agree. And I'm not sure where to stick it in. And obviously, I think it is an important recommendation, but I think maybe it needs its own objective or because I think just in my experience in Long Hill, vacating the town, you know, the paper streets is more almost like an organizational administrative situation. Is that, you
Well,
know,
the problem with vacating paper streets is that when you get to the recreation element, you want to use paper streets as part of the basis of trails.
but not all of them. That's why this says on a case by case basis.
Right.
So you can't just say blanket, okay, all paper streets are gone. You'd have to really take a look at them.
yeah, I mean, for example, we were looking at the paper street network all up around the Gillette train station as a means to enhance a trail system and connectivity to the Gillette train station. So that would be on a case per case basis.
Right,
Yes, agreed.
right.
But we've got some paper streets that will never be developed, particularly down at the bottom end of Mitchell and those streets in that neighborhood.
Right.
We've
Oh,
got fragments of paper streets, partially vacated, partially not vacated, but all of them useless.
let's pull this out. I mean, we agree, and we struggled to find a home for this. Let's highlight this one, Liz, and see if it makes sense to develop really a separate objective and recommendation tied to really the paper street issue, because it does intersect trails. It does intersect, in some cases, connectivity.
Mhm.
It transcends a lot of different things that we might.
The
want.
problem is that with the exception of Jersey Avenue and its connecting paper streets in the Gillette area, most of the paper streets in town have no potential use as trails. They're just left over from when we were selling wetland lots to the people from Brooklyn. And they never bought the lots, they never built the houses, they never bought the streets, they never
Right.
built the streets, and the streets are still on the map.
Yeah.
Why do we have 5 paper streets cutting through the middle of the Little League ball fields?
Right.
So this is the point, is to address it somehow, right? And it's going
Yeah,
to many
exactly.
solutions. So let's just take it off and figure the best way to
We'll figure it
represent it.
out.
Part in
Exactly.
circulation, part elsewhere.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think it is going to be a case by case. You can't just say, get rid of
No.
all.
Right. Okay,
Okay.
good comment. Thank you. All right, goal 2, objective 2.1. That's good.
Oh, sorry, let me just scroll down further.
There's an awful lot of text in 2.1.1 and 2.1.2. And I'm wondering if that text isn't stolen from somewhere by our planner.
Oh, it absolutely is. But it's for ease of, just for your understanding, just so you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, absolutely it was.
Yeah.
But is this the beginning of an action plan? Or is it, I mean, a complete and green street? I don't know how you would make my street a complete and green. I just don't know how you do that. Maybe there's a way to do it. Maybe it's not important.
Your street might not be important.
Right.
I mean, you know, there are hierarchies of streets, and you may not live on one that anything needs to happen to, because perhaps there's not a lot of street traffic that goes through there. It's really more in the places where there is a lot of bicycle traffic, pedestrian traffic, vehicular traffic.
Make boulevards.
No, but you know, but anyway, so that's what the text is. It's really more informational for your own understanding. The next one, this I did take, I think I probably took this from perhaps the latest circulation draft that I was, you know, inherited or we were, you know, passed on, having to do with the 1996 sidewalk plan. And I know I spoke about it briefly with Don on Friday, that I don't know to what extent, I mean, that certain things certainly have been implemented, certain things haven't. There may be very good reasons that certain things haven't. And I was trying to include this recommendation to sort of say, oh, you know what, there may be those things that haven't been implemented, but are still relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And that's somehow that gets expressed, you know, addressed in the plan.
Okay.
We have sidewalks on both sides of Main Avenue. And yet the joggers use the street anyway.
I know. And then bicyclists use sidewalks sometimes, so it works both ways. So okay, so then some of this is a little repetitive, I will grant you, and you know, maybe there's a way to winnow it down a little bit. But this is
with regard to 2.1.2, we decided in a discussion last year that Valley Road was not ever going to be walkable, and that the need for sidewalks on Valley Road should not be considered a generalized requirement, because the Valley Road, the two sides of Valley Road and the length of it just said that people probably aren't going to walk there. Main Avenue, yes, but not Valley.
It says Valley Road Business Districts.
Yes.
So what's wrong with the business districts?
Yeah.
It's
already
probably
have
will never
sidewalks.
be used as a walkable area by the people who go there.
The
the
business
only,
districts?
no, but let me just say this. That may be the case today,
Correct.
but if there are, for example, there already have been a couple of multifamily developments that have been approved
Mhm.
just adjacent to Valley Road. And I think it would be nice to have a pedestrian network. I mean, we had this conversation, I know, when we did the land use element, for example, like kids going from, I'm not even sure where they're originating, but like they'll go to Burger King and somehow wind up at the, you know, the sports fields behind the municipal building, and that there be some sort of accommodation for them to do that safely.
Yeah, as opposed to walking across grass and vegetation. That just a general comment on where you're talking about general walkability and stuff. It makes no sense to me whatsoever that if I walk from Dunkin' Donuts to Panera Bread, I either have to walk through the parking lot or onto the road, as opposed to a path that at least takes me on. So I have a cross at the road at an appropriate point, as opposed to walking across vegetation and mulch, which I'm sure everybody does. There's so much, so we've got to get smarter about this. It just doesn't make any sense.
I agree
That's-
with you, Dennis. There are probably instances where you're gonna, I mean, this has come up with the zoning board where people have requested sidewalks be built and it's sort of like, who's gonna walk on it? And it doesn't connect to anything. But I think you have to start somewhere. And I think that having it as a policy in these major thoroughfares is not a bad idea in your master plan.
And not just sidewalks, but it's a connectivity from one property to another.
Yeah.
Sometimes, so people are going to walk. Like there's behind the Sterling Hotel to the school next door. They have a little nice lilies. They put a few bits of gravel down so you can walk to use their parking lot. And we've got to get smarter about this stuff in general. Otherwise, we're trampling over somebody's vegetation. It's causing the property owner more damage because they have to fix their vegetation all the time with mulch. Makes no sense.
And it ties into the whole concept of public safety, that if people
Absolutely.
are gonna do it anyway, you might as well try to make safe accommodations where they're doing it.
Any other comments on these recommendations that are up on our screen with regards to the,
2.1.5,
Yeah,
safe routes to schools. You've got to ask the police department why there is never a crossing guard position on Valley Road in front of Gillette School. We got crossing guards all over town except in front of Gillette School. Why? And obviously there's a cogent, legitimate, reasonable history about why we never done that. And here we're talking about safe routes to schools.
Dennis, don't we have traffic crossings there, automated crossings?
yeah, there's a blinking light. That's a signage with, you can hit a button and the light flashes to slow traffic to cross in front of Gillette School, but that's it.
I mean, we got 3 crossing guards on Central Avenue between the railroad and Long Hill Road, but none in front of Gillette School.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's a reason for that, probably having to do with the safety of the crossing guard.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, because, it's such a busy road and we put, they've tried to put kind of traffic calming strategies in place there. And I know parents came to us some years ago and complained, and that's why we, whenever the county was making changes to the road there, we
Well, the best deterrent is the police pretty aggressively go after speeders going over the 25-mile-an-hour limit when school's in session. So
yeah,
traffic does slow way down there, just usually because there's police presence in the parking lot of the school.
But I just want to add that the safe routes to school isn't just in the vicinity immediately of the school.
Right.
It's coming from those neighborhoods where people or kids might be walking, and making sure that they can do that safely.
Right.
and so what kind of things would that cover, Liz?
Well, it's a program, I think it's a national program, but it's certainly a program by the state, and they would, help you sort of identify safe routes. They might make available to you or give you ideas about funding if it came to that. If, let's say you wanted to build sidewalks on local roadways, that kind of thing, or local signage or something along those lines, and they could help you out with that.
Okay.
But it's more just, I don't know, but in some communities, let's say kids who live within certainly like maybe a quarter of a mile walk to school. And it depends on different communities, but that that there be some sort of established area where you would recommend that those kids walk so that they can get there safely.
This sounds like building paths across the green on a college campus.
With the fit, which one, 2.1.6 or the square?
No, the
group
argument
is
about
full.
telling people where they should walk safely.
If kids don't have a place to safely walk and they're walking in the middle of the road and they get hit, then, you know, you haven't made accommodations for them. All right. So then.
2.1.6 is a duplicate.
Yeah, you think so? Oh, why? It to 2.1.4? No, 2.1.3?
Well, because we talk about trails in a lot of places and we're here, it just comes up again with different words.
Yeah, this is where I was trying to get in the concept that of using the paper streets
Mhm.
as trail connectors. And maybe that can be a little clearer because that does not appear anywhere else using the paper streets. So maybe it needs to be wordsmithed a little to be more specific.
Well, just do it with the other one, right? You said you're going to take a look at paper streets, so pull them two
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, and maybe that's it. Maybe it becomes its own objective and that
Yeah.
just all goes to there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 2.1.8 curb cuts. I'm all in favor of reducing curb cuts, but I think that probably belongs in the business district
Yeah.
land use rather than here.
It might, I know, I think we did discuss it in the land use element. I have to double check that being something that we would want in sort of new development or redevelopment. But I think it doesn't hurt to call back that here, or maybe we can actually say, see, blah, 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 recommendation in land use element.
The next item, 2.1.9 bike racks. Do we know that anyone in town wants to bicycle to the train station? I was surprised this morning to actually see a bicycle in the bike rack at the library. For the first time in almost 20 years, there was a bicycle in the bike rack by the library. And I'm wondering if bike racks at the train station.
The bike racks in the Gillette station are usually pretty full, but there's only about 3 or 4 slots.
Okay, I am unaware of that, but thank you.
Yeah. So there are bikers that go down to at least the Gillette station.
All right, the next group of recommendations are all sorts of things that are now being looked at in a lot of communities with regard to how they design their roadways. And this kind of gets into the whole idea of complete streets. And it sort of lists types of things that the township could look at, or the township could advocate that the county look at on their roads. And it's all sort of in an attempt to make the streets complete, you know, to share the road, that there's, you know, safety for pedestrians or safety for bicyclists, and that it's, you know, and there's safety for, you know, motorists as well. And that they can all kind of coexist. So that's what this next group of recommendations is, if anybody has any specific.
2.1.12.
Yeah.
I would be curious to see police statistics on how many car versus pedestrian reports we actually have.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think that is, and maybe it should be made clearer that some of the sort of results of what we talked about in objective, you know, goal 1.1 with working with the police department, that would, some of those conflicts that are identified be addressed through these measures. I mean, there's also the idea that some people are not going to walk because they're terrified to cross Valley Road, you know, and if they feel a little bit more comfortable, that maybe they would do it.
Okay.
.1.10
Yeah.
Narrow the width of vehicular travel lanes for more room for bicycle pathways.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see a trial of that somewhere in town. If someone could tell me where we should conduct the trial. Long Hill Road?
Mhm.
Actually, I think New Vernon Road, north of the circle might be a place where you could try that. But we
Mhm.
should see a trial and see if it does any good.
You know, aren't most of our roads so narrow that it's impossible to do?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, Long Hill Road is forever going to be a challenge, but
Mhm.
maybe New Vernon Road,
Vernon Road is any wider than Long Hill Road.
it's straight and level.
I think
Yeah,
this-
actually, you know, maybe Tom, you're the biker that
Yeah.
I certainly know about here. Maybe you could opine in this.
Yeah, listen, there's no room, even riding on the white line, and there is no room. Cars have to stop or slow down if there's oncoming traffic, wait for that to pass, and then give me a 3-foot leeway to pass me. And that's actually a law that you have to give a 3-foot gap between the car and the rider, even a car in a walker or a car in a jogger. I've even jogged on that road, and it is there's no diet. All right. There's just meat and bones there. There's no muscle. There's no fat. There's no nothing.
you can't lose anyway.
You can't. I would maybe Valley Road. There's a couple of spots along Valley Road where it does get a little tight, like right across from ShopRite, over and by Panera Bread. But it's also wide enough where you do have almost a pull-off shoulder in some of those areas on Valley Road. I would give an end-to-end drive just to see what that looks like. And I biked up and down that road. Once you get west of Main Street, the road's pretty wide. It's got 3 feet from the line to the curb most of the way, all the way west till you hit the town line.
Is there bike traffic on Valley Road west of downtown?
Yes. I take that way all the way to Lyon, out to the VA hospital and back.
Well, I mean, that's you, but
There's others. No, there's others. I don't see a big tandem group of people, but I'll see onesie twosies out there going in both directions. Some cyclists, some just using it for commuting, some are athletic.
Is the Great Swamp a bicyclist destination?
It is.
Oh, yeah.
It is. And where do people come from who would bike there?
They would come from Lee Road. They would come from Pleasantville. They would come from
Essex County.
White
I
Bridge.
biked-
So
I-
every neighboring town.
I biked
At
out
the-
there. I biked out there from Maplewood, Essex County. People come out from Essex County to bike through the swamp area.
That's
at
correct.
at the far east end of White Bridge Road, there is a huge parking area, the world's largest cul-de-sac. And you could probably fit 15 or 20 cars in there. And that's where the bicyclists
No.
should be parking and starting from.
Yeah, most of the bicyclists are riding through. They're not using that as a starting point. They're coming from some other point, whether it's their garage or another meeting point elsewhere, like Low and Oak trails systems, and then they will bike from there.
Can they bike on the trails east of that parking area, or are those only pedestrian trails?
Pedestrian trails.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to find any diets on those roads. And plus you'd be hard pressed with the swamp, because when they were repaving, I was like, can you just move it to, 18 inches left and right, just to give a little bit of something? I mean, even if an animal comes out onto the hard surface, they're going to get hit. And they're 3 inches onto the asphalt. They're already going to get hit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this sort of road diet is something that would probably be most appropriate on a county road. It's probably not going to happen on the township roads, but I think there are some other recommendations in here about like sharrows, that are, which I think are very helpful because at least it's like a subconscious sometimes reminder to a motorist that there could be somebody on a bicycle, or that people bike through there. So I think that may be more appropriate in some of those narrower roads.
So is the recommendation still good though?
I think it's a good like policy. If it applies anywhere, then why not try it?
Exactly.
I mean,
Agree.
Until there's more technology jamming, things in cars, you're just going to continue to get more and more distracted drivers. That's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Distracted drivers, not so much a lot of times these roadways.
Could you go back, Liz, to 2.1.14?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, forgive my ignorance, but what is a greenback sharrow?
Yeah, no, I understand. It's I'm sure you've probably seen these where it's like a green arrow that's actually painted onto the roadway. And that's what I was talking about, that it's an arrow to indicate that the road is shared. So they call it a sharrow.
Oh, sharrow, of course. Why didn't I know that?
But
Where was I asleep when the 6th grade English teacher taught me that?
Talked about sharrows. You see them more in cities, to be honest. But I think if there are heavily biked, narrower roadways in Long Hill, I think it's not a bad idea to consider them.
Yeah, sounds good.
They have them in Britain, but they put them on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah, and backwards. I'm going to say that. So, like,
Okay.
Okay, anything else we got here?
To 17,
Mm.
bike lanes on county roadways. Once again, we're not looking at the strategic solution. Bicyclists use Long Hill Road because it's the only way to get from one end of town to the other, but you can do it on side streets with the exception of the missing link at Dogwood. And for years, people have talked about and engineered and re-engineered the missing link at Dogwood, which would take all the bike traffic off Long Hill Road and get from one end of town to the other without going up there.
As a bicycle
And we never get to
enthusiast,
build it.
as a bicycle enthusiast, I can tell you people are going to still use Long Hill Road because if they're training for something, they're going to train on those hills. And that's what they're going for.
I
The
mean, there's
casual
an
rider
awful
will
lot of
not.
bicyclists come up White Bridge Road to Carlton to Dogwood, and then they have to go on Long Hill Road to get to the blinker light and then Basking Ridge Road. And they could just as easily go down Old Forge and Bungalow. They still get the hills. But we won't spend $200,000 to build the connection between Dogwood and West Dogwood. In fact, we came close to it at the planning board a couple months ago when we did the subdivision over there. We were right on the brink of the paper street, West Dogwood, and the applicant avoided West Dogwood, even though it's the obvious solution to the bike trail issue. And maybe we need a hard recommendation to spend $200,000 and see if we can get the bicycles to use it.
Well, Dogwood would be part of that paper street analysis, right?
It's one of the few paper streets in town that that actually has a potential use.
Yeah.
But to span the gap between Dogwood and West Dogwood, which crosses a little bit of flowing water, and then there's a fairly steep incline, all of which was in the plans for the application that we saw a few months ago. It has been estimated at 200,000. Nothing's cheap. But does it do us any good to keep talking about negotiating with the county and painting stripes and this, that, and the next thing when the solution is much more strategic?
Well, to continue that, one way to encourage cyclists to use a designated route is by putting signage up. So without putting sharrows down, you put signs saying this is a bike route. So it would actually take them through a pre-designed path and flow that you want the cyclist to take. Now, they may cross through neighborhoods, and that may, I won't say objections will arise, but concerned residents may have something we would want them to say something or get their input. But this is one way to move cyclists in a designated direction.
We actually have a bike route with about 40 signs connecting the Millington and Sterling stations. Does anyone use it?
Nope. I don't even see them, and I come down Main Street.
Yeah, we've walked. We've got.
Hey, guys, we're getting a little bit long. We're getting a little bit long into some
Thanks,
of
Tom.
these. Let's try to keep moving on with some of the different recommendations here.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, these are all kind of best practices that are being implemented in a lot of places. And some of them may work here in Long Hill. So I think it's not a bad idea to just have them in as things that, this is your list of tools.
Right.
Well, yeah,
If
but is
somebody
that a
really
plan?
objects to any of them, I think that they're worth to keep in to the plan to keep it updated.
I guess
Okay.
the one sticky point that I have, and it might go back to, it's sidewalks. We should be trying to put sidewalks wherever we can, especially on like Valley Road. And I know there was contention with in Gillette, where we only put half a sidewalk in for a particular property. We didn't do the east side, we did the west side of their driveway. So we should be trying to encourage sidewalks, even though it may look like an end point. It may be the starting point for a sidewalk heading in the other direction. So,
Right.
and that's
Well,
a safety
actually
issue. That's a biking issue. That's a lot of things.
Tom, back about 20 years ago, there was a petition signed by 700 residents for the town to build a sidewalk from Mountain Avenue all the way to Berkeley Heights on both sides of Valley Road. It got a lot of traction, a lot of attention, 700 signatures.
And it was a county road, right? It's a county road.
Yeah.
So
But somebody would have had
sidewalks
to
didn't
pay.
At the end of the day, all taxpayers pay.
Yeah, somebody pays. Everybody pays. It
So-
can't stop you from trying, though.
No, exactly.
Well, if we don't spend the money, somebody else will.
Well, I mean, there are opportunities then if it's in your master plan, when somebody comes in, let's say, Elite on Valley Road or some of the other applicants on Valley Road, and you say, hey, we have this in our master plan, we want sidewalks on this
Yep.
road. They'll put them in.
Yep. And it's a way to make the connections as they happen. Thanks, Don. That's my
Yeah.
only.
Well,
Okay.
as you
No, thank
recall,
you.
the zoning board had an application a few months ago on Plainfield Road.
Mhm.
And part of the problem is that it was an isolated sidewalk instance. And a few members of the zoning board said, well, why not ask the applicant to build sidewalks all the way to Valley Road,
Mhm.
across the property of others? Actually, all the way as far as the PNC Bank, which has a sidewalk. And the answer was, you can't do that.
No,
So
certainly you can't, but I think to Tom's point, it is you're doing, you're doing it in increments and with the idea that these will be filled in the future.
Right. And Tom, we would greatly appreciate, more of your input as we refine that circulation element, especially
Yeah.
from your perspective as a biker, an avid biker in town. I think that would be really helpful to us.
Yep, happy to do so.
Great. Okay. Good, guys. Do we want to jump into just a brief break? Do we want to, the Parks and Rec element is not that large, is my recollection.
I got a lot of notes.
Why don't we
Yeah, can we-
pause for 5 minutes, Don? This is
Yeah.
my proposal. Pause for 5 minutes, bio break and everything, and then
Yeah.
come back a little refreshed, and then we'll just go as far as we can on that Parks and Rec. It'd be
Yeah,
nice
so
if we
you-
can
and
complete
then-
it.
Isn't a resolution and other business to do as well?
Oh,
Yeah, and Dennis, about, what will that take? About 10 minutes, 5 minutes?
I think we could probably knock off all three in 10 minutes or less.
do you want to
Okay.
do that right when we come back and then come to Parks and Rec?
That might make sense.
Okay.
Okay, 5 minutes, guys.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Well, temperature. For the record, the actual temperature in Pennsylvania is 73 degrees right now,
It's not bad.
about 10 degrees less than here. But I'm going to leave the turkeys and the snow-covered driveway up anyway.
72, nice. That's golfing weather, 72.
Dennis, you're in Pennsylvania?
No, I am actually home. This is just a background picture of turkeys in Pennsylvania.
Okay. You should try and get, I've been trying to get a hold of you. If we should talk.
Okay, when the meeting's over, call me.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're all back.
Okay, did everyone read the minutes of the July 12th meeting?
Yep.
Anyone want to discuss anything?
Nope.
Nope.
Can I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the July 12th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolutions.
Just very quickly, Deb, I did not vote. Okay.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, Dennis. I just said to Deb, I did not vote because I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay.
So just want to make sure it's not everybody.
We've got two resolutions, and because of the nature of them, I'm going to ask Deborah to do a roll call on each. The second one is the application of non-core on Old Forge Road. You will recall that we saw a draft of this at the last meeting, and I put it on hold because there was some missing stuff in the resolution itself. Steve Warner has fixed those. If you have it in front of you, paragraphs 13 and 14 are new. And I am satisfied that it in the language of the resolutions that were covered now. So we are now in a position to adopt that resolution. Deborah, who's eligible?
Everyone present except for Mr. Hands.
Okay, can I have a motion to adopt the resolution of memorialization on Anchor?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
You got a couple.
Roll call,
I'll
please,
take Mr.
Deborah.
Malinowski as the second.
Perfect.
Tom.
Joe?
Tom Jones made the motion. Tom Malinowski seconded.
Yes, so now I'm taking the roll.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Joe?
Yes.
And Mr. Malinowski?
Yes,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Richardson?
Yes.
Chairman Sandow?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And do you want me to sign that tomorrow?
I would love for you to sign that tomorrow.
Okay, then I'm in love. The last resolution we have is the appointment of Steve Warner. According to ordinance 171.6. The board may appoint an attorney and set rates of compensation. Well, at our last meeting, we appointed Steve Warner's new firm and set the rates for billing, but we did not actually appoint Steve to be the board attorney. We passed the one resolution and the second one is now in front of us. And you've all read it, and it's a little bit more lengthy than I anticipated. But nonetheless, we are now in a position to appoint Steve as the board's attorney for the remainder of this year, which is 4 more months.
And the rates are still the same, Dennis? I didn't double check the rates against. what
Yes,
we had
same
before.
rates he was getting it at his old firm.
Okay.
This is getting to be a habit with our attorneys, jumping from one firm to the other.
That is true. That is true.
However, so at any rate, can I have a motion, please, to appoint Steve Warner as the board's attorney?
So moved.
Second,
Roll call.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
yes.
Mr. Ham?
Can't
you
hear
say me?
you.
Mr. Ham?
Yeah, if you said me, yes.
Thank
My,
you.
my webouts are going a bit funny.
No problem. Mr. Malinowski?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Richardson?
Yes.
And Chairman Sanders?
Abstain.
Motion carries.
Okay, we are done with that bit order of business and we can go back to the last element that we have in front of us. Don, go ahead.
Okay, so let's, if you could, Liz, pull up our Parks and Recreation recommendation. Draft recommendations.
Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah,
Okay. All right, just so to begin with, there's a general goal, and then the recommendation was basically has to do with, what could be a process or a criteria for choosing for the township to use in order to determine whether they should acquire an open space parcel. And this is actually stuff that I think, I sort of took from the other drafts that have been done in recent years, and kind of put that all into that.
Stop right there.
Yeah. Okay.
No, just don't scroll anymore. Keep talking, but don't scroll.
No, I mean, that's most of what I had to say.
On the screen in front of you, the third line up from the end of 1.1.1, it talks about a semi-rural character. I
Mm,
thought we were now low-density suburban.
yes, you're correct. This is literally taken from earlier drafts, but you are absolutely correct. I will
Well,
change that.
deliterate, please.
Deliterate. You're 100% correct. So a lot of these, I didn't come up with any recommendations here. This is all taken from earlier drafts. I just organized differently. So perhaps you have vetted a lot of this in earlier, prior to my working in Long Hill or even after. So anything that people want to talk about specifically, we can talk about it.
1.1.5.
Okay.
Don, do you have the stuff on Eloise Park, or do I
Yes.
have to dig it out?
no, I have several different things on Eloise.
That question mark is from me because I didn't know. I don't know what that means. Yeah.
Remember we talked about the paper streets near Gillette Station?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Same issue. It's Eloise Park. There's a big tract of land and some paper streets that were donated to the town about 35 or 40 years ago for the purpose of creating a park. And the town accepted the donation of the land for the purpose of creating a park. We never got there. Don has walked it.
Yeah. It's pretty wet certain times of the year, as many areas are around the town. But it certainly has the potential for a trail that connects through some of the paper streets onto Eloise Park. It's a nice track. It's got some,
Ultimately, it would connect the Gillette train station to Town Hall if
Okay.
fully developed.
yeah,
And in fact, in the time frame when it was donated, the Boy Scouts engineered some bridges and trail works and were prepared to build them
mhm.
in order to actually complete the trails in the park. It never happened. And once again, I have to put in a plug to Kelly Rushtow for finding all that stuff in her
Mhm.
files, in the files of the society, and cranking them in a few years ago. But if Don has the stuff, get it.
Yeah, no, I have the stuff that we talked about, Dennis. If there's more stuff, I'm not aware of it, but I think I have enough, Liz, to work with you on that, so.
Okay, that sounds fine.
It's the missing link. It's a missing link in the trail network, and probably one of the easiest because
Yeah,
all the rights of way exist
yeah.
and the plans exist.
Okay. All right, good, thank you. Okay, anything else, Dennis? I know you said you had a lot of
121 is a duplicate.
121, extend the Passaic River to span the township from east to west. It's a duplicate to what was in 1.1.1.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it was a duplicate of, but I kept reading the same thing over and over again. It was like
Well, I think,
Independence Day.
yeah, no, Groundhog Day. I think that there are different aspects to the Passaic River Trail, but they should probably all be consolidated into one recommendation, so it's all in one place. Because there's things like this is utilizing, to make it part of the greenway. Then there's things about putting kayak and canoe launches, and then they should be consolidated. I agree. I was confused myself.
Mhm.
Anyway, what
The
else?
next item I have to talk about is 1.2.2.
Okay,
As of this moment, the Passaic River is flowing 5 cubic feet per second. Flood stage is 1,000.
okay. Well,
So you can't rely on the Passaic River for canoeing, at least not on a commercial basis.
okay.
You might get there once or twice a year, but the notion of creating a business there,
Where do
well,
we
this
say
just says lunch area.
Yeah,
I don't
this-
think, I don't
this
think we're
business.
suggesting a business as
business.
much as
No,
just
no business.
access.
No.
Yeah, we, if you recall, we paired way back because we had earlier discussions about ecotourism and all those things. And so we've paired it way back. I think we still need access points to the river. I think that's what this is about.
Now, my question is, with the plans for the new Valley Road Bridge to King George Road, which will in fact relocate the bridge to the north of where it currently is there something that we can work into those plans that would create a boat launch right there? There's parking there.
Mhm.
All right, so maybe that could be just an example of a place where this could
Well,
happen.
no, I'm talking, this plan is well underway, well developed by both counties. There is even a website for this project, because it will involve shutting down Valley Road for some number of months while a new bridge is built. And maybe you can find contacts through their project website
Mhm.
and go from there to see if they can spend a little extra money to build the boat launch for us. Of course, that's only one end, but then with 4 cubic feet per second, you're not going to sail very far anyway.
This is also part of some of the connectivity that we're attempting to do watershed wide with a whole number of towns that Brendan and I are working on, and connecting the towns with regards to stormwater and flooding. And I mean, it could result in peripheral issues even like this, things that aren't surrounded, more with connectivity and connections in regards to different projects that are occurring.
The north of Davis Bridge, which is the bridge on Basking Ridge Road, the Long Hill side of the river, all the way up a mile or so, is owned by the town. And the houses on Rayburn and the other newer streets up that way do not go down to the river. There is a green belt along the river north of Davis Bridge. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be possible to put a boat launch there fairly cheaply, and at least get canoe through the gorge.
So I think, Liz, what we can summarize as part of it would be to, evaluate additional launch areas, safe launch areas for access to the Passaic River.
Okay.
Public, I guess we're talking about obviously public access areas to the Passaic River.
Okay. Got it.
Okay.
All right, Dennis, what else?
1.1.9. I'm thinking about the private pool at Prism that we had approved a year and a half ago. How do we encourage a residential developer to open his recreation areas up to the general public? Is that even possible, remotely possible?
Here's a couple of pros and cons for that particular development. I think it's probably too late, but what a lot of developers will tell you is we don't want the liability. We're not prepared to take that on. But I have seen walking trails in larger redevelopments that maybe aren't technically open to the public, but the public uses them. So it's a good question, which is, is this actually realistic? But I think it's not a bad idea to have in here as something that we would want that developers to know that this is something that we're interested in. And the legalities and logistics could be worked out on a case-by-case basis. But I think in that instance, my guess is that Prism would say, hey, we want to provide something to an amenity to our residents only. And 2, we don't want to accept the liability of somebody coming in here who doesn't live here and drowning. And the other thing is we want to keep this as a privilege, like if you allow it to be open to the public, then you risk it becoming overcrowded and, not a nice place to be. I'm
just looking for one of your footnotes that talks about how to do this encouragement.
I think that like I said, this is, again, it's a policy that it doesn't hurt to have in your master plan.
I don't recall that there were any recreation areas planned for the elite development in Gillette. Were there? Does anyone remember?
No,
there weren't. And I think partly they couldn't because they were
space constraints.
Constrained by wetlands.
Yep.
But that isn't to say, I think on Plainfield Road, that property also was constrained by wetlands, and they are being encouraged to do a trail on their property. So,
So does it hurt us by leaving it in here?
I
We're not defining what recreation and open space, in general, we can define, but we're not saying, I mean, swimming pools, I could understand people not wanting that.
yeah,
I mean, recreation areas, you could probably debate. Open space, I think is less debatable, perhaps.
And I thought on the Millington application, they did design kind of a plaza type thing up near the train station there on that.
I think that was
side
because of the commercial aspect of
Right.
the commercial
Well, that
property, so we
plaza
did
was
get that.
the plaza was in the original plans, but it did not appear in the final plans. That
Hmm.
corner by the train station
Yeah,
turned out to be a small commercial building rather than a big plaza.
No, but they were going to make an open area space
right.
Yeah,
for people to eat in and stuff. So they were good.
yeah, to the right or left of the property, of the building. I forget where it was. I think it's closer to the
north.
train.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the north side.
Well,
right,
well,
okay.
to Liz's point, we have no hope of having this dialogue, I think, if we don't have at least a basis for it in the master plan.
Yep.
There we go.
So, to
Yep.
at least have the dialogue. What else do we have? Last comments?
131 is a dupe.
all right, let me see. Hold on. Develop pedestrian walkways.
132.
Wait, hold on. Sorry. It's a dupe to what? This is it in the circulation? I don't know.
No,
It's up top. It's
the
up
trail, the trails from Sterling to
Right. which is-
Cantor Park. That's a dupe.
okay.
That's,
Okay.
that's been mentioned several times.
Okay.
You can highlight that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, here's a mention. The last sentence is a mention of the existing signed bike route, which connects Sterling to Millington train station via the Hicks tract, which Tom says nobody uses.
Walkers used Hicks track. I don't see a lot of cyclists going through there. And
132.
I didn't say it doesn't exist. I said I don't see the signs.
The signs are there. There's many.
Oh,
of them.
there's the
We mapped
signs are
them out.
there. There's
We
about
mapped them
40
out.
of them
Pam did.
altogether.
Yeah, we know.
I'll have to follow it.
It goes from the train station.
I'll follow it.
There's
I've
one
got a
hard
map.
by
I can tell you where they are.
that goes through Brendan's backyard.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm definitely going to go riding through there then. ATV.
Yeah, right.
Brendan, take out the speed bump on Nolendale. 1.3.2. Passive park at the intersection of Cottage Place and Mountain Avenue. That was tried about 20 or 25 years ago and was roundly defeated because of neighborhood pressure. I think if that's in the master plan, you could get a whole lot of people to come out and object.
Okay.
Although it is tempting and it's an obvious place for a park, the neighbors just were.
Or just, again, I think the approach was just some trails through
So
that area.
shall I take out that then here, what I'm highlighting, passive park, take that out?
Yeah, I'd say the passive park is what gets everybody upset about more so than potentially a trail network linking to the Gillette train station.
Really, passive park? People upset by passive park? I mean, what could be more
Yeah,
passive than
because
a
it
park
would
that does
attract
nothing?
pot smoking kids, but pot is
Nah.
legal now, so maybe it's not so bad.
They're gonna be smoking that down in the, at the diner.
At
Yeah,
school.
Starbucks.
That's cool. Yeah. All right.
I don't
Well,
see anything
benches
wrong
and
there.
exercise stations now gets a little bit out of passive, doesn't it? I don't know.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, we could take that
Yeah,
out.
I think we would want to talk in terms of more of a trail system. Again, to improve safety, people have to walk out on Mountain Avenue. with respect to get down to the train station. So to provide some alternatives. I don't know if it's that safe to walk through a wooded section of town either at night, but it's more so for just pedestrian circulation in that area rather than having to walk out on Mountain Avenue.
I would include the benches. I wouldn't strike the benches.
Okay.
Right.
Just maybe take out the exercise.
Exercising station, there you go.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What else?
Linkages with neighboring municipalities. If you don't want to get your feet wet, that restricts you to Chatham and Harding.
That's fine.
And
Okay.
not Berkeley Heights?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, you're right, Berkeley Heights.
Still.
But there's hardly a trail over that big bridge.
Yeah. You can get over it.
Mhm.
Now didn't we move this? I think we may have even mentioned this in the land use element. So we'll have to check. I thought we had this as one of the recommendations, this trail system, the trail system along the rail.
I will have to double check. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah,
think-
that's fine. I mean,
Yeah, but let me
even if
just-
we've captured twice, at least we've captured, but we should check that because I thought we hit that in the land use element.
I don't recall it being there personally, but it may be.
I don't either. I mean, we had, things about plazas and that kind of thing,
Mhm.
open space areas,
Right.
but I don't remember the rail trail.
Right.
All right, Dennis, what's next?
Yeah. Any others?
Well, that 2.1.1, I got a lot of dupe there.
Yeah, okay. I'm not, I think you're right. This probably, some of these recommendations need to be pared down and probably consolidated.
And 2.1.2 continually update existing playgrounds as improved safety equipment. That's purely an administrative issue for the recreation department. I don't see that there's a master plan issue there. I mean, obviously, they're going to keep it safe. And that's what we hire administrators to do.
I have no problem taking it out. I didn't know if there was any specifics that people had, like any playgrounds that really needed to be renovated that they thought they should put in the master plan.
I think the small playground down off of New Vernon Road there, as you leave north on the Myersville Circle on the left, I think there was some equipment there that I think has been abandoned. I don't know what the plans are.
They've actually upgraded a lot of that playground stuff. And
Okay.
actually a tree had come down and taken out, I think, the
Okay.
left side of the swing set, but that has since been repaired as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, the
So
problem
better
with that
idea.
playground is that there are no children within walkable distance. That's a playground where the little kids can play while their parents play baseball.
Mhm.
Yep.
It's not really a neighborhood
Right.
park, a neighborhood playground. We don't
And-
have
And I
neighborhood
understand there, I
playgrounds
mean,
except as they,
what's the name of that little park there?
Myersville Field.
Myersville Field?
Yep.
Because my understanding is the tennis court's coming out, the basketball court's coming out to improve parking. Is that?
Yeah, they're going to look at the parking situation there, and maybe a pickleball court will go in its
So
place.
that's already in motion. I don't think we need to necessarily capture that in this master plan.
Okay.
no, what I'm getting at is the real neighborhood playground. And except for the playgrounds at the Gillette and Millington schools that are school playgrounds, I really can't put my
Cantor.
finger on a playground that little kids can walk to.
Mhm.
Cantor.
Yeah, okay.
It's really the only one I can think of. I can't even think if there's anything down there. There's the ball fields. But again, unless you live on that side of Valley Road, south side of Valley Road, in close proximity to that, you're not walking there. It's just that neighborhood it's walking there.
What about Clover Hill? I mean, it's private in there, but I mean, kids can walk to it in the neighborhood.
Mm. That's what Central Park's going to help us with.
That's right.
Parking.
There you go.
So should I?
Well, there's
take
not
this
too many
from-
neighborhoods that you can walk to Central Park on for little kids.
Most of
That's everywhere. You're going to find that
Yeah.
situation everywhere. People are going to drive to a parking area, and then their kids are going to go they're going to accompany their kids into the park and the playgrounds, much like they do at Myersville ball field, much like they do at Cantor, much like they do at the ball fields.
And with Sterling Lake, for the
Ah,
schools,
yes, you're right. Sterling Lake's got a lot of walkable houses
Probably-
nearby.
it's probably the biggest one, right? Even
Yes.
compared to Cantor,
Millington
it's
as
pretty
well.
good.
The school back by Millington there.
Yeah, use a school there.
Yeah.
I'm not, Dennis, believe me, I don't disagree with your sentiment. I mean, the more we can encourage and create local opportunities, the better. Absolutely.
So are we now
Should-
aligning with striking 2.1.2?
I think so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oops, hold on.
2.1.4 is really nice. I like that.
Oh, hold on a minute. Wait a minute. Sorry.
Overactive cursor.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about sunflowers and pumpkins.
Encourage volunteer stewardship and community activism. Or I can't tell if you're being facetious or not.
No, I'm
Okay.
absolutely serious. You got to go down to Heritage Road and look at the sunflowers that are planted on the public parkland, public open space across the street by the pump station, and pumpkins galore, all neighborhood garden.
Oh, that's
Just-
nice. Yeah.
Just happened because of neighbors who wanted to do it. I
That's
think the
great.
master plan had to say, don't cut it off.
Continue
Yes,
that.
yeah, we support it here, so that's good.
Okay, what about the next? And again, I know this is from earlier drafts and maybe some of this stuff is outdated.
Yeah,
I would just-
2.2.1 is my question is where?
Yeah, I think part of it, maybe that Central Park piece, but
Yeah, well, say it.
Okay, should I?
Get off dead center and build the park that we bought 7 years ago.
Okay, so should I do that? Should
Sure,
I
why
add,
not?
addition of a okay, all right. So
such as Central Park or whatever. you wanna call
Okay,
it.
okay. Central Park.
And
That's
find
what
out if it
Central
has a
Park.
new name.
We do say Central Park earlier, so whichever is the right word.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay. Got it. Okay. And then what about the tennis courts? Is this also at Central Park or?
Yeah, I would throw that there as well.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of that as an extension of Cantor or
Well, there was a strong push several years ago to get tournaments here, and for a tournament you need 4 courts in a row, and all we have is 3 at Cantor Park. I haven't heard that noise recently. I put it in the same category as pickleball. It'll come and it'll go.
All right. So,
so extend Cantor at Central Park, but I guess there's not much room at Cantor.
okay.
There may not be much room in Central either.
It doesn't have to be close. If it's close proximity, I mean, it's only across the road from each other. So, yeah,
Right.
is it a total of 4? Yeah, and maybe include what's already built and add a couple more, whatever it is.
All right, but keep the recommendation.
Mhm.
Yeah, those came from Rex, so.
Yeah,
certainly
oh,
could go
okay.
there.
Oh, okay. All right, good, good.
I mean,
Then,
this is a while back, mind you. This was a while back, but
add and or fully utilize any existing indoor rec space to support programs that cover a wide range of activities. My question was, is there indoor recreation space currently that's not school?
There is
The community center on Warren
yeah.
Avenue.
Yeah.
community
Oh,
center.
okay.
But the community center keeps
Mhm.
itself busy with programs that tie up the hall. The dog obedience programs and the tennis programs, they set up the hall for a couple months or a season and run the program, and it's not as flexible as you might want. It's not just a big flexible open space like the school gymnasium.
Right. So is there a potential to use some other, perhaps existing township owned building or
Well, when the
space?
community center was built 45 years ago, that was the plan.
Yeah,
And over time, it evolved into a series of specialized programs like dog obedience and so on, because it wasn't being used as a community center the way it was originally envisioned.
Well, I think in fairness, the population has outgrown that building.
Yes, good point.
so should we rework this recommendation to, I mean, I don't want to say that you don't want to put in like, oh, the township needs to buy or construct a new building, but that's why I have the thing. Is there any,
I think we need to keep
Potential.
exploring opportunities to
Explore
see if
opportunities.
there's room for growth or something makes itself available where we say, yeah, that would be
So
fit for
explore-
purpose for whatever we're trying to drive towards.
So explore opportunities as opposed to add and to use.
okay.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Yeah, I
for-
think that's a softer way of doing it. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right,
The
now.
way to rejuvenate the community center is to fill it with pickleball courts.
It's
You can
popular
only get
sport
one
these
or
days.
two in there. It's really not a big facility. I mean, it's kind of dated. I'm trying to be
Okay.
kind.
Yes.
Building an open air amphitheater for performing arts.
Yeah, my question there is parking.
What?
Parking.
If you're going to have an open air amphitheater, I mean, you're talking about Homedale or someplace like that where you got acres and acres of parking available.
No,
Oh,
I don't think we're talking about that scale.
No,
The PNC Arts Center.
Rolling
or
Stones will be
whatever.
there.
But even on a smaller basis, I mean, the ideal place for this, I think, is the vacant lots on Warren Avenue. Just north of the dentist.
I think you have an opportunity right on the existing field at Cantor, not the turf one, but the other one, unless that gets changed to turf. I don't know what the future holds for that, but you can create a bit of an atrium with the field right there. It's been used that way already for several music events, live concerts. So it might be just building a shed, if I can call it a shed, that allows the performers to be able to perform, and you have that entire soccer field right there, that grass field already there, and you have parking already established at municipal parking. So there is opportunity there already with existing locations.
Mhm.
Yeah,
There
that's
was
it.
also talk of a natural amphitheater in Central.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Mhm.
So the concept, I mean, we've got municipal complex there. I mean, you said Cantor. Do we need to specify Cantor, or is municipal good enough?
No, I think municipal complex would incorporate those locations.
Right.
Yeah, why don't we just take out near large scale township facilities and not
Right.
do the such as, because then it almost seems like we've picked those places.
Well,
Can,
we
could
don't-
this amphitheater be built in wetland?
No.
I don't think so.
Why not? I'm not talking physically, I'm talking legally.
You can't, no. To construct an amphitheater in a wetland?
Well,
I
I
think-
mean, right now I'd go to a concert in a wetland amphitheater because it's gonna be dry.
Well,
But I think there was concepts about those sort of things. I don't know, Dennis, if we were talking about it or I've got it from somewhere else, but yeah, there's open space and wetland, and you know, if it floods a bit, then you don't use it for a while. But,
Yeah, these are
I think-
concepts, right? If
Yeah.
if it's feasible, maybe it'll be done there. If not, we go back to
Guys,
existing.
You're talking about two separate things. You're talking about areas that are flood prone and areas that have been designated wetlands. Those are
Oh,
two things.
maybe so, maybe so,
Right.
maybe so.
I'm
Yeah, maybe so.
thinking about Cantor Park.
Maybe so.
I'm not Cantor Park, Central Park. With one soccer field on 70 acres.
Mhm.
And if we can build a trail network through the wet portions of that lot, and
Mhm.
you'll correct me if I say wetland when I really mean flood prone or vice versa. Why couldn't we build an amphitheater there and use it during the dry season?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Again, that's part of the
That's-
concept, right? We would have to really do an assessment. I mean, there's some high ground right there behind Walgreens, which we just purchased. I think that's the land that we purchased. So there is dry, usable
Yeah, but
land in there, but
Anything
Hmm.
you engineer in a floodway or a flood prone area is going to fall under the scrutiny potentially of the state and
mhm.
Yeah,
and
and I think-
hydraulic engineers with regards to how is that structure or how is the constructed structure going to affect flow and impacts to the area. So,
I do think though that you, even in designated wetlands, you can build trails.
yeah, trails are one thing.
Yeah,
That's
no,
fine.
because Dennis, I think you were kind of saying, well, if you can do trails, why can't you do an amphitheater? And I think trails are something specific because it's sort of like you're building it to appreciate nature,
Yeah.
whereas an amphitheater would be sort of an imposition on nature.
Right.
Well, except that the amphitheater seating is all open air,
Right.
undisturbed ground.
but we
You're only
don't need
talking
to.
about a stage facility.
We don't need to debate this here because
Right.
we're not saying yay or nay on this one. We're just saying build it. We're not saying. Can I just make one quick comment, such as, do we want to say at or near large scale facilities?
Yes, yes. Okay, let me just write that down.
Just so.
Uh, 2.2.6, community gardens. That was discussed a great deal at the township committee 2 years ago and died. I'm not sure why. I remember why it died, but they suddenly stopped talking about it.
No harm to leave it. We've got pumpkin patches, pump stations. So what's wrong with having a garden?
Well, they were trying to locate it in the space behind the parking lot behind the library. There's
yeah,
open space on the
Right,
way
right,
to the
right.
river.
Hey, guys, we got 10 minutes here, so let's try to wrap up.
Right. But conceptually, is there any issue? Maybe in a couple of years, someone finds another bit of land. All good.
Another one, explore, you can throw in explore opportunities to create.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
And 2.3.1 is also pretty much a dupe.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the difference is this is talking about doing paved trails within existing parks, which is slightly different from what we've said elsewhere. And that's really all about, accessibility for people with, who are have difficulty walking or whatever. So again, some of this can be reworded and pared down, but that's sort of the thrust of this one.
Yeah, this is accessibility is the
Yeah.
theme, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
So
Go for
Don,
it.
there's one thing that I didn't hear being called out, and that's like Blue Acres. Is there any, where the town purchases back and it becomes town property? Do we need to call that out? Because there is, I think, mention up above in 1.1.1 or 1.2.1, somewhere up there where it talks about purchase or acquiring properties.
Tom, I thought at Blue Acres, you had to just allow it to go back to, you couldn't really use it for anything else. You had to allow it to go back to its natural state.
To nature.
So that's what I thought, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Dawn, you might know better than me.
Yeah,
on
well,
that.
I just know there's going to be a tremendous amount of funding trickling down to municipalities on infrastructure related things. I've talked to you, Brendan, about some of those, but one of the areas is in, purchase of properties that are vulnerable to flooding. I mean, I think there is going to be a resurgence in funding to deal with that. The question is, how many properties do we have still in that position that are vulnerable that need to be purchased, to complete what already has been done?
Well, the Mercer Valley area behind Chase Bank, for example, that whole area was subject to Blue Acres purchase, and I think we wound up with 5 or 6 or 7 properties because the owners weren't interested in selling.
Right.
I think we did talk about it maybe on the conservation element, Blue
Yeah.
Acres.
I think
Okay.
that's probably
Yeah.
gonna end up more in sustainability, utilities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, no, that's Tom, that's a good heads up, because we had talked about that. We want to take advantage of all of the Build Back Better funding that's trickling down to municipalities. There's a lot of infrastructure related funds that are going to become available here in the next 5 years.
Cool.
Thanks, Don.
So, yeah.
Speaking of the 5 or 6 or 7 lots we bought on Mercer Street, is that the location of a neighborhood playground?
That's what I'm saying, Dennis. I don't think we can build a playground there. We're supposed to allow it to go back to natural state, I believe.
Mhm.
I'll look up what it means, what happens when you move it to Blue Acres and what does that mean? So I'll look that up.
No,
And
there's some excellent websites out there with
Yeah.
regards to what you can and cannot do.
Yep. I'll send it around to this group so you have it for reference.
All right, everyone, thank you. This was, I think, very productive. We got through a lot. Thank you for your attention on a summer evening. This will be most helpful to us as we, the Master Plan Committee, continues to forge ahead. So,
Sounds good.
Well, thank
Nice
you
job.
for going out of your way, miles and miles out of your way to join us, Don.
oh, gosh, no problem. My pleasure.
All right.
See you guys.
Take
Do we
meeting
need, I
adjourned.
guess, Dennis, do you want to go back to a motion to adjourn, or I don't know how we want to close
Well, why don't, since you have the longest way to go, why don't you make that motion?
it? I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Good night, all.
Good night, all.
Take care.
Have a good
Bye.
night, guys. Thanks
Bye.
again. Thanks, Liz.